Good morning, Mr. Heikki Lut, State Secretary of the Republic of Estonia, the members of the panel, colleagues from the Estonian government, members of the academia, members of the team that prepared this report. It's a pleasure to be here today in one of the OECD's newest member countries, as well as the most recent member of the Eurozone. As the State Secretary just mentioned, many months ago, the Estonian government office asked the OECD to perform a public governance review of Estonia. And the team has been very busy working on this project for the last, nearly the last year. During this period, there has been intensive work. More than 140 interviews took place. Probably many of you participated in those interviews. There were background papers prepared, case studies, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank on behalf of the OECD the counterpart team from Estonia for all the support that provided to this work, and particularly to all the officials and academics and members of NGOs that very patiently participated in the interviews and provided us with information and their own views on what were the challenges and possible opportunities for developing public governance in Estonia. As the State Secretary just mentioned, this report has already undergone a review process in the OECD. It was discussed by all OECD countries in November last year at the ministerial meeting of the Public Governance Committee. And I am very pleased to join you in presenting the OECD findings and recommendations. As I just mentioned, Estonia is one of the newest members of the OECD, and it's the second smallest economy, the 33rd smallest territory, and the 6th most open economy. So Estonia is a country that takes global competitiveness very seriously as a small and an open economy. But I think that what may be less understood compared to the importance of fiscal health or open and innovative economy is how important good public governance is for the purpose of global competitiveness. Good public governance contributes to global competitiveness by providing a stable and predictable framework to business, by providing security to people, by lowering transaction costs to companies, and to be able to deliver public services at the lowest possible cost to taxpayers. So public governance is an essential component of global competitiveness, even though sometimes we don't see that in the indicators or statistics that support these discussions. So this report and this review that the OECD performed, we hope can contribute to bring this issue forward to the agenda, to establish or to enforce the linkage with the economic and social challenges of the country, and help improving the delivery of public services at all levels of government. This report is essentially aimed at analyzing the strengths and weaknesses of the Estonian public administration and to increase dialogue, both in Estonia and in the international fora, about the success and future directions of the Estonian public administration. But the most important part of that, as the State Secretary just mentioned, is the dialogue and the discussion and the decisions that this may unfold in Estonia itself. We are just providers of our knowledge, of our views, and the experience from other OECD countries, but all the important decisions, all the important steps, of course, have to be taken by you. I should say that the OECD public governance reviews are a methodology that has been developed for the last few years, and very much in the same fashion that we are doing in this report. They are aimed at helping to make the case for reform, focusing on outcomes and impacts, to make the case for reform for different stakeholders of public administration, for citizens, businesses, and civil society, that is looking at outside the public sector, and also to make the case for reform within public administration, so that so as to mobilize the public administration capabilities and to overcome inertia that happens in every big organization like a government. The public governance reviews are also aimed at supporting a strategic and whole-of-government approach. It's very common in all countries that sometimes issues of public management are tackled on a sector basis or on a partial analysis. What we try to do with the public governance reviews is to provide a whole-of-government approach, to look at governance from different sides of public administration and service delivery. This involves looking particularly at policy coherence and prioritization, at aligning structures and incentives, and achieving preconditions to support the successful implementation of reforms. And also, through public governance reviews, we try to make OECD work more relevant to countries, so that this does not stop at a sort of academic or theoretical analysis, but linking what are the challenges for countries with the solutions that some other countries in different parts of the world, in different member countries of the OECD have found. I would like to emphasize that public governance reviews are not only concentrated in seeking solutions to problems, but actually to exploit opportunities. So this is not preparing a list of problems or issues, but also identifying what are the opportunities that could be taken in the future and that can be further exploited on the basis of good public management. There has been an increasing interest in this approach to public governance among OECD countries. In 2008, we performed the first public governance review in Ireland. Then in 2009 and 10, we worked in Finland. Now we are delivering the review of Estonia, and we have a pretty heavy agenda for the next couple of years with reviews for France, Greece, Poland, and Slovenia. In these reviews, we try to combine a country focus to understand what are the real issues in every country, because every country has its own institutional and political setting, with reference to international best practice, and then to lead to a sort of pragmatic view on what could be the practical solutions, actions, programs, initiatives that can be tackled in each country. So as I just said, this is not an academic study, but this is is oriented towards actual practice. In order to perform this review, of course, we have to take into account the context. In the case of Estonia, as you know much better than I, the economic context was one of very strong growth prior to the global financial crisis. Estonia, in the OECD context, was the country that grew most during the 1996 and to 2007 period. Also, it is a country that conducted a very responsible fiscal policy during all that time, and as a result of that, Estonia generated public or fiscal surpluses between 2002 and 2007. That, of course, changed once the crisis struck. And at that point, as you know well, the fiscal balance changed from a surplus of 2.5% of GDP in 2007 to a deficit of 2.8% of GDP in 2008. Of course, if nothing had been done on the area of fiscal policy, this fiscal change would have been much larger. But Estonia was ready to respond to the crisis and responded very swiftly with 2 supplementary budgets in 2009 that represented 9.3% of GDP in terms of fiscal adjustment, and that's something that certainly can be praised in the face of the reality that many countries in the world face in the wake or in the course of the international financial crisis. And right now, because of the surpluses of the prior years, because of the fiscal adjustment, now Estonia is a country that even after generating a deficit in the last couple of years has the lowest level of debt in the OECD countries and certainly in Europe. And that, of course, it's a very important strength today in the global economy. As you see in the international discussion, in the newspapers, in the analysis, today public debt is a very important concern of many countries, and many of them are trying to develop a number of fiscal adjustments and consolidation in order to control the growth of debt, of public debt that has happened in the last few years. Fortunately, that's not the case in Estonia, and therefore priorities in the allocation of public resources can continue or can be reinforced in the future. And where what is most remarkable about, I think, about Estonia is the importance of investment in education as investment for the future of the country and the competitiveness of the country and the levels or the standards of living of its population. Probably because of this, Estonia ranked very well in the OECD PISA performance ranking for mathematics as a 5th of all the countries that were tested in the 2009 exercise. However, at the same time, average incomes are relatively low compared to other OECD countries, and therefore this requires prioritization, and Estonia spends less than the OECD average in a number of large spending categories like social protection, health, and general public services, and the same could be said for unemployment benefits. So this means that the ongoing challenges for the public administration, very much summarized by the State Secretary, have to do with the rising dependency ratio, social inequality, high unemployment, and a new and more restrictive fiscal environment. So probably from the point of view of public management, the factors that were important, that operated in the expansion prior to the financial crisis, or even those that were useful at the time of the crisis, may not be so useful in facing the post-crisis challenges. Those post-crisis environment, as for all countries, will be characterized by higher levels of uncertainty and also by more fiscal restraint. So it is important to be aware that a new impulse is necessary to face this new environment. Of course, this new environment is not unique of Estonia. Many countries are facing similar challenges, but possibly because of the contrast with the period up until 2007. Possibly for Estonia, these challenges are a bit different. And also because one characteristic of Estonia is that it's a relatively small country with a small state. And I could very much share the views that are expressed in the report and in the background paper that was prepared by Mrs. Kulis Sarapu, that I think it's here, because I myself come from a relatively small country, and I can understand very much the kind of challenges and peculiarities of Estonia in that sense. These characteristics are a limited scope of goals and activities, multifunctionalism of civil servants and organizations, civil servants that perform several functions or have to perform several functions at the same time, informality of structures and procedures. In a relatively small state, we know each other. That puts some constraints on steering and control, and generates some personalism of roles and functions. So these features are not good or bad in essence, are just the basic characteristics of small states, but implies that the solutions for Estonia should be thought from that point of view, considering soft levers that influence informal behavior and complementing informal networks with more institutionalized coordination processes and mechanisms. So I think that the issue here is how to keep the advantages of a small state that usually have to do with more flexibility, with more response capacity in times of challenges, but also address some weaknesses, either actual or potential weaknesses. If you compare Estonia with a large country, let's say the US, you will see that, well, in the US there is plenty of institutional arrangements, not only for processes, but also for checks and balances, for bodies that oversee other bodies, that oversee other bodies. That's something that a smaller country cannot afford. So we have to find other ways of generating an integrated way of governing, and I think that's very much the core of this report. So the core of this report indicates that a number of reforms to improve the capacity and capability of the Estonian public administration have either been slow to start or are still at the discussion stage, thereby putting at risk its ability to be as agile and responsive as needed, and particularly that some of these reforms are needed to allow the public administration to adopt what we call here a single government approach. Now, you may wonder what this means in practice. What is a single government approach? Why is it important? Well, a single government approach, put it very simply, means that we all row in the same direction. By having a common sense of purpose or agenda, by having a strong center that provides direction to government, but at the same time having a horizontal cooperation and collaboration between different parts of government. That a single government approach means to have an effective financial management, but that is effective not at the expense of sector policies, but cooperates to sector policy success as well. A single government approach is not the same as a uniform public service, but it means essentially that having a space for different views or different approaches or different disciplines, there are the processes, the institutions to bring all those views together and to generate a common approach to public challenges. Of course, in the recent experience of Estonia, there are a number of good signs in this direction, but there are also some indications or some indicators in the contrary. Multiplicity of strategic plans or indicators or goals. The complex process of drafting law reforms. The disparities in the provision of public services across the territory. So these are some of the signs that are identified in the report that indicate the need to take further steps towards developing a single government approach. At the same time, the report identifies also some encouraging signs, some steps that have been taken in the last few years, and I think the opportunity to achieve or to meet this objective is very clearly within reach of the Estonia public administration. So, to be fit for purpose, the Estonian public administration needs to work as a single government basically in 3 dimensions: promoting a whole-of-government approach in the public administration and to decision-making, building a common agenda among different parts of the government, and delivering public services effectively. And my colleagues will elaborate a little more on what the OECD survey finds and proposes in each one of these 3 dimensions. So my colleagues will take up from here.